Welcome to the New Mexico News Podcast, headlines and stories from the land of enchantment. Brought to you by KRQE. Here's Chris McKee and Gabrielle Burkhart.
So Gabby, this has easily become one of the biggest stories of the year here in New Mexico. We're talking about the South Fork and Salt fires. Those started near Ruidoso and also the Mescalero Apache Reservation. It happened on Monday, June 17th, and within hours, there wasn't just a threat to that village of Ruidoso, but hundreds of homes were burning and the entire village was forced to evacuate. Within a few days of the worst of the fire, we also learned at least 2 people were killed and around 1,400 structures were burned. Now, there have been estimates that have kind of been shifting over time, but we believe that there were somewhere between 500 and 1,000 of those structures that are homes.
Yeah, and these are not just the first wildfires that the village has had to deal with over the years, but, at least in my recollection and talking to people who live there and watching this unfold, it is one of the first times that we've seen a wildfire come so close to the village of Ruidoso itself so quickly. Right. And while full-time residents were allowed back into the village last week, there were so-called exclusion zones where people were not allowed in, and those are areas where investigators are working along with canine search and rescue to try and locate some of those people who are reported missing or unaccounted for in those first days and weeks.
Yeah, so the fire sparked on the 17th. It was about a week before they started letting people back in those exclusion zones. Since people were starting to be let back in, those have all kind of gradually shrunk over time. We also know fire investigators are still trying to determine exactly how these fires started, but as of this recording, there has not been an official cause determination made by those investigators. When the fire started, though, there's something interesting that was happening here. And Gabby, you made some calls to try to help get to the bottom of this with state and local officials. Sort of there was an idea that maybe they had a feeling of how this may have come to be.
Yeah, I received a tip that I wanted obviously to try to confirm before we did any reporting on it. And here's what I can say that I did get confirmation of. So I asked the state fire marshal's office whether anyone from the Mescalero Reservation reached out to state fire marshal's office with concerns of a possible arsonist in the area ahead of the South Fork fire. The state fire marshal's office confirmed, quote, Mescalero fire officials did reach out to the state fire marshal about reports of a possible arsonist. And because the fires were wildland fires, the fire marshal gave them guidance on who to reach out to with state forestry, who then got them in touch with investigators from the BIA. So again, we do not have an exact cause of the fires, but we do know that it's all under investigation. And also the FBI is involved. They're offering a $10,000 reward for information leading to the arrest and conviction of the person or persons responsible for starting the fires near Ruidoso. The FBI says it's working with local, state, federal, and tribal partners in the ongoing investigation. To be clear, if you, our listeners, have information, you can call the FBI tip line at 1-800-225-5324. That's 1-800-CALL-FBI.
Yeah, and as they work on the investigation, we know that, life kind of goes on for the folks still living in Ruidoso, and we know that life has been upended for a lot of people there. Even though some residents are being allowed back in, the infrastructure to live there has essentially come to a halt. We know there were a lot of problems with water, electricity, gas, and then you talk about the supplies that people need, groceries and whatnot. Just some of the main challenges to getting back to normal life up and running again in that area. So when the fire started, as thousands of people were evacuated, there were some people who also chose to stay behind. That's where we saw a lot of the incredible visuals from, were those who chose to just take their chance and see what was going to happen. Gabby, you talked to one of those people who did stay behind and also was one of the first groups of people let back into Ruidoso, it sounds like, about a week after the fire sparked.
Yeah, so you mentioned, obviously the whole village was under evacuation notices. It's not advisable to stay under an evacuation notice, but one of the gentlemen that I did speak with, he is 74-year-old Don Spencer. He's a retired U.S. Army veteran. He's had a family cabin up there since the 60s in Ruidoso. He's lived there for decades. He works part-time as a security guard. He stayed behind hoping the winds would shift and hoping that he could save his house. You know, some people have, this is all they have.
Yeah.
So,
and I mentioned that he had stayed behind. He was not one of the first people to be allowed back in, but he was there.
He's been there the whole time.
People getting let back in. I should correct myself there.
That's okay. Yeah, he's been there the whole time. He ended up losing everything in it. So I talked to him last week on a Zoom call since he is stuck in one of those exclusion zones where, you know, law enforcement is asking him, please don't roam around. They're conducting an investigation. So we talked over Zoom. He is staying at his sister's house. That is one of the only homes left standing in her neighborhood. So I'll let him tell his story. Here's my interview with Don Spencer. So how long have you lived in Ruidoso? Tell me about it.
Oh, my mom moved here in 1969, and it's kind of been home ever since. I did my traveling and things for years. She got sick about 15 years ago, and I came back full time to help her out, and been here since then.
Wow. Okay. What's it like? It looked like you had quite a view there from your property.
I've got a great view. Well, I guess it's a great view. It's not as pretty now, but it's still okay. Yeah, we saw the fire starting early in the morning, Monday, and followed it all the day. And I've got pictures and videos during the day, and it kept going and going and going. And I had hopes of it was going to go around us. The winds were just about okay, but they started fluctuating. The fire hit a canyon below me and came up and wiped out my entire neighborhood.
Oh my gosh. When everyone was getting evacuated, you stayed behind, correct?
Well, I helped some family and some friends to get evacuated and got them on the way to Roswell. And then I came back to a place that I knew was pretty safe. And because I figured folks were going to be needing a lot of stuff here, and this is my home. So if I didn't have to leave, I wasn't going to. So I've been able to work. I work as a security guard, and I've been able to travel around pretty well over the last week. They've kind of limited me now. There's so many, and all the law enforcement are great. I mean, folks here are just doing great. It's just a big disaster, and it's new to everybody. Communications are limited, and so everybody's on edge and all. So, but overall, the thing that I've continued to be amazed by is the number of people who have come from all over this country to help us. I mean, there are tent cities out here with firemen and firewomen, and I'm just overwhelmed by the response. I mean, only in America. And I've been trying to talk to some of the folks. We're a rental market, we're a vacation spot. So there's a lot of rentals and a lot of hotels and condominiums. And I've tried to visit with some of the folks. All these tents and these poor folks are sleeping on the ground. And I've suggested to some folks that we have so many rent houses here, condominiums that are not being booked now. They're not being rented now. So I suggested that maybe we could allow some of these people sleeping on the ground to get into a nice place and a hot shower. So, you know, I think as a community, that would be the best thing we can do to attempt to thank these folks for what they're doing for us.
Yeah, I know there have been some property owners who have done just that, right? You know,
Yes,
we're going to
ma'am.
open up our Airbnbs to anyone who needs it right now, especially the people who are putting up the firefight. But I want to go back to that day, if we can, when it started. It was just about a week ago now. When you first
Yes,
started
ma'am.
noticing the smoke and the flames, I mean, what was your thought? We've seen, you know, Ruidoso deal with wildfires over the years, unfortunately, but you were thinking it was going to go around you, right?
Yes, and we've always had real good service. I watched the planes dropping slurry and helicopters dropping water not long after I noticed the smoke, and it just kept growing. The wind started kicking up, and that's what got us. So it just kept going and going and going, and it didn't quit. And then there was another fire across town that caused the people I had helped evacuate to have to evacuate a second time. and everybody's safe. That's the nice thing. But no, it just kept growing and growing, and finally got to the point that I knew had to get out of my home. So I found a place to stay, and so I've been doing security work for my boss, who's stuck in Roswell right now. She can't get back in, and she's been real helpful in getting me access to places. But because of the victims that they're finding now, they don't want people like me to mess anything up. So
Right.
they've asked me to stand down, which I am.
Yeah, walk me through that. So you're retired military, correct?
Well, only spent 6 years during Vietnam in the Army. I wasn't a career military person. I was stationed most of my time as a military police in Central America.
At what moment did you realize you needed to leave your house?
Uh, Gosh, I must have been in the afternoon, and there were some homes that did survive my area. I contemplated maybe hanging around there, but you know, I'm no hero. And so, and there were some family members and friends who needed to get out. So I went and assisted them to get things in the car and get loaded up and go out of town. And they're still out of town. So in fact, my sister who evacuated, this is her home. This is one of the few homes in this area that's still standing. And so fortunately, I have a nice place, a very nice place to stay and communication. So I'm a lot better off than most folks.
And when you went to your sister's house, you were telling me over the phone, you guys kind of saved her house. How close did the flames get
Oh,
to her
honey, I had
house?
a tiny, tiny part in it. There were three individuals from the city that continually drove a tanker truck up and down behind the three homes that are still standing. And they spent the whole day fighting the fire on their own. These aren't firefighters, these are city employees.
Wow.
They took it of their own initiative and saved these three homes here. When I came here, I guess it was Tuesday morning when I was able to get up here. There were a lot of little hot spots behind the house. There's a forest behind this and all. And so I was able to hook together a bunch of garden hoses and crank up a little sprinkler, and it got out most of the little hot spots because I was amazed the house was here anyway, because there's destruction all around us here.
Wow.
So
How
I mean,
close did the flames?
God was looking after. It came to her back fence, honey.
Wow.
It's probably 20 feet away from her home, but we're good now.
Wow. Yeah. And you talk about, people being safe, but there was some really devastating stories that we heard in that initial week. The gentleman who was found outside the Swiss Chalet
Yes,
Motel.
ma'am.
There was another person found in a vehicle. We're still waiting on more information for people that are unaccounted for. What goes through your mind when you think about that?
Oh gosh, my sympathies out to those poor folks. This thing came on so quickly. I'm just grateful for the help we have now. It's going to take a long time to recover, but these fires are so dangerous and so quick. I don't think anybody chose to stay where they were at. I think either their vehicle wouldn't start. It's a shame that anybody had lost their lives, but considering the mass amount of fires and how fast they were traveling, I'm not surprised that some folks have lost their life.
The first wildfire I covered there was the Little Bear Fire in 2012.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
then there have been, fires since then. Just watching, though, like you said, how quickly things were moving towards the village and how quickly the village was trying to evacuate people from Ruidoso. I personally have never seen it get that close that quickly to the actual village. Had you experienced anything like this before?
Seen it close, but nothing like this. This thing just pretty much encompassed the whole area from east to west, and it was just massive. It looks like an entire wall of flames, maybe 300 yards from my house. And so it had come over a ridge down a canyon and was coming up another side of the canyon, which my home sat on top of. And I knew it was time to go. I knew this was not gonna go by us. And so we left, and here we are.
Yeah. Tell me about just Ruidoso, the community, right? You've lived there since the 60s and
My mom has, and I've been around here since the 60s, full time for about 15, 16 years now.
For someone who doesn't live there full time, describe it for us. What is it like?
Oh my. Uh, the town, Midtown, our shopping area, looks fine. I mean, Ruidoso in many spots hasn't changed other than the surroundings, but there's patches of destruction all over town. Some spots are great, some spots are real ugly. I mean, it's what I saw over the last week was I would be in an area and there would be a home here, a home here, and one in the middle was burned. You might have 10 homes, one right in the middle was burned. And when I got to my sister's house, the ashes had blown so much they had blown large chunks of bark that had been charred, and the wind had blown them and landed all over around my sister's property. And I was able to put those out too.
Wow. So your daughter set up a GoFundMe for
Yes,
you,
ma'am.
and
She's
she wrote a
she's
little
quite a critter.
story about you just to let people know, a personal story, if you don't mind me sharing, that you are a security guard in the area, retired military, but also you lost your home. And from what I understand, it was too expensive to get insurance on that home. So you don't have fire coverage, correct?
No, ma'am.
Has that sunk
I
in?
couldn't afford it. I'm on a very limited income. But no, my daughter had also offered me too, and she had offered to do all kinds of stuff. And we've been here so long that the fire folks who over the decades have helped us all, they've always done a great job. This thing just whipped everybody. Okay. And so no, it's I've still got a nice flat piece of land that I hope to be living on someday in the future.
Were you able to see where your home was? What was
Oh,
that
honey,
moment like?
no, ma'am, I've been all over this area. I've got pictures and videos of the destruction.
Mhm. But
Not only my home, and one of my neighbors is here with me. She lost her home. Uh, no, it's really ugly. I mean, any fire disaster, you see the same type of stuff. Everything's burned, and the tires are melted. Uh, every car I've seen burned so far is all painted the same color now, primer gray. And so I've seen some amazing. One must have been a beautiful home. Had this beautiful landscaping, rock area all over this home. It must have been gorgeous. The only thing that was left on the entire property was an angel statue looking over this destruction, this beautiful home. And I got a picture of that just because it was one of those things that got my attention. My goodness. Looking back, that must have been just a lovely place for people, very peaceful. And the only thing that survived it was an angel.
wow. What was the moment like for you when you did see where your home was?
Well, it was not surprising, uh, but it's done. I mean, we can rebuild. I'm just a fortunate man.
So, have you checked the GoFundMe that your daughter created for you
No,
recently?
ma'am, I haven't yet. That's her doings. Bless her heart. She's an amazing daughter, and whatever she does is fine with me. Things are going to work out.
Can I share with you just a portion of it if that's okay?
Of
Do you
course.
mind? Okay. So
Oh no.
she wrote a little bit about you. I won't read the whole thing to you, but partially here's what she wrote. She said you were happy as a clam in the little old house that you put so much love into. And then she talks about, you know, now the house is gone. She said, what we do know is he needs a roof over his head, and we need your help to make it happen. There are a lot of answers we still don't know, but I do believe in the power of community. I believe in the power of story, and this one is just beginning to unfold. So please help with any amount you can, and then talks more about just consideration, thoughts, and prayers. And I just
Yes,
wanted to
ma'am.
share with you at this moment, I'm going to refresh. We've got about 9,000 $65 in the account so far.
That's amazing. That's amazing. My daughter is incredible, and the people. You know, you've seen it, Gabriel. When something happens, the communities come together. You know, this is the way that I think a community can do well. One thing I've visited with a few folks that survived is that I mean, we're a vacation place, but we have neighbors. And I've noticed that I don't, a lot of folks don't even know their neighbors. And God forbid we have a fire to cause this, but maybe if every neighbor knew the other neighbor, you know, they don't have to be socializing with them, but, you know, be able to say, hey, Joe or Mary, good morning. And not, it seems like we're all isolated in our own environments and with a few contacts. And I've just had the pleasure this last week of meeting some of the most amazing people out here. I mean, they're resilient, they're strong, and you know, we'll build back, but the strength is there. We're not going to ever go back to the old days, but we'll get back there. It won't be the same, but we'll survive.
Two things that you're in what's called an exclusion zone right now, where they're not letting people in, but you're kind of trapped in there. What do you understand?
They've asked me to stand down, and which is not my nature.
Yeah.
I work for a great lady, and when she asked me to do something, I follow her advice. So this is my first day off.
Just to give people context of what you were doing, though, you were, you know, walking around, taking pictures, videos, letting people know whether their homes were still standing. But
I
now
went.
there's an investigation kind of taking place. And from what we understand, you know, they're looking for maybe people that are unaccounted for, but they're also uh, potential criminal investigations happening in that area. From what we understand, the FBI is offering reward money for information leading to the arrest and conviction of somebody who potentially started these fires. Just hearing that it could be human caused, what do you think about that?
People do crazy things. You know, there are people who don't think of the consequences of their actions sometimes. Yeah, and that's the reason I'm home today for the first day. I'm not law enforcement. I'm just a New Mexico security guard, okay? And I have no more authority than any civilian does. And the police, I guess, they were asking me to what I was doing in these areas, and I explained it, and it worked fine until last night when the police stopped me and they were considering taking me to jail. And I was like 3 blocks from my sister's home. I said, I just finished my assignment, which I'm authorized to be there. There's a place called Innsbrook Village. It's a nice condominium area we have here. And I've been assigned to guard that. And so I would drive from my sister's house to Innsbrook Village, do my patrolling there and visit with folks. Until last night, I, they told me that I need to quit what I was doing. So, and I understand that. I mean, there are so many different agencies here. And what I do is try to spread some encouragement to some of these folks. I take water around, you know, just a positive word.
But so, Don, what do you know about any potential criminal investigation that's
I
happening
know
there?
nothing, honey. I know, ma'am. I don't know anything. All I've heard is rumors, and it did seem suspicious that we had several fires started at once. So yeah, somebody started this fire. Don't know who, and that's not my business. But no, that's what caused this thing. If there had just been a single fire, we probably could have had the resources to contain it. But when you have 3 major fires going on at the same time, our resources were stretched way too thin. And fires, even lightning storms, usually don't start this many fires at once. So it was an individual who, for some reason, decided to, you know, do some damage, and they succeeded.
Mhm. And what do you hope comes of this criminal investigation or the investigation of the fire? You know, do you hope that
Honey,
there's some accountability in this?
honey, that's none of my business. I hope they get things settled, but the damage that's been done, no matter who gets arrested or convicted, there's no amount of resources that could ever repay what we've done. We just have to get here and start rebuilding. I'm sure whoever did this will get caught and punished probably. But as far as vengeance, I have none of that. That's somebody else's entity, and I'll let God deal with those folks.
Well, Don, is there anything else that you'd like to add that I'm missing here that you want people to know about the folks from Ruidoso in your area?
Oh, well, we're gonna get back here. We've got a beautiful piece of property and a few burned trees, so we'll come back. Don't give up the faith. And one thing that would be very important, since we're so limited on resources around here, if you don't have a home, don't come back right now. If you don't have to be here, please don't come look. I think the mayor has said something along those lines too. But right now, if you don't need to be here, please don't come, because you're going to slow everything down.
Yeah. Sounds like there's a lot of confusion too of like where people can, what are the unrestricted zones. So they're still
Yes,
trying to
ma'am.
work all that out, it sounds like.
Oh, and things keep changing by the hour. Okay, so they're doing the best they can do. But again, please let the folks here do their work, and we'll get all of our wonderful neighbors and visitors back here as soon as possible.
Okay. Well, thank you, Don. I appreciate your time. Best of luck, and please feel free to keep me posted.
It is really a remarkable story there from Don Spencer, again, sticking around when those wildfires were happening. Even though we know there were the mandatory evacuations, we know that a lot of people just made that decision. They did not want to leave. And, just incredible to see that experience firsthand. We want to add that we will post a link there to the GoFundMe page that his daughter set up on his own behalf. That'll be in our show notes. As Don mentioned, his home was not covered by insurance because, as he said, it was just too expensive for him on a fixed income to insure. I'm sure he's not the only one probably running into that problem right now.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen it with the Hermit's Peak Calf Canyon fires. It's just one of those unfortunate kind of things that we see in the aftermath of these destructive events where a lot of people, truly do lose everything. And so his is just one of many there in Ruidoso where people are still processing what they've lost, how to move forward. We know there's a lot of community efforts going on right now to help those folks, and certainly more stories to share. The South Fork and Salt fires in Ruidoso are still under investigation, and as of this recording, firefighters have certainly gotten a better handle on the flames. But as of this recording, they're still dealing with those wildfires that have burned more than 25,000 combined acres in that area. So our heart goes out to those folks as they move through the recovery process. We know it'll be a long one.
Yeah, we know leading up to this, everybody always has said it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And that's always such a hard thing to think about, I think, because that when could be just tomorrow. And in this case, it was summer 2024 when that when came through for Ruidoso, and has
Monday
changed
morning
the landscape there significantly. And just 2 years after the McBride fire, when that ripped through a different part of town, and people thought the same thing. Are we going to have a village to come back to? This one certainly, I think McBride fire was around 200 structures that burned. So with this one being about 1,400, far more destructive. Here seeing the South Fork and Salt fires through that area.
Yeah, and there will be, federal, local aid in there for probably weeks and years to come for those folks. So if you have an idea for the podcast or someone that you'd like to hear from, always reach out. I'm Gabrielle.Burkhart@krqe.com via email, and gburknm on social media.
And I'm Chris.McKee at krqe.com, also at Chris McKee TV. Thanks for listening.